Hey everyone, welcome back to my garage. My name is Paul, and tonight we're going to go over some projects that you can make out of some leftover scrap. If you're anything like me, we're working for more than a few months, you're going to have some extra scraps left over. So let's go ahead and look at some things that we can do to make some use of this extra stuff. It always makes good firewood, but maybe there's something more productive we can do with it. So here's the first idea. Now, whenever you're painting or staining something, it's always a good idea to let it rest on a surface where it's not going to damage or mar the paint or stain that goes on it. So there are these, there's these things, I forget what they're called, painting cones or something like that. But basically it's a spike with a very fine tip that you can rest your stuff on top of. And these are incredibly easy to make. I use them all the time. I think you can buy them in a set of 3 for like $7, or you can make them with leftover scraps. So I'm going to show you how to make these things tonight. So for this project, all you're going to need is just a scrap of wood and a dowel. It doesn't matter what size wood, what type of wood. This is just some pine or birch or something that was just advertised as soft wood from Home Depot. This is just a cutoff from the American flags that I make. And you're going to need some dowel. This is 1/4-inch dowel, but you could use any size dowel that you want. So we're going to cut these down on the bandsaw because the cuts don't necessarily have to be straight or anything like that. So let's get into it. So I'm going to chop this down to about 2 or 3 inches wide, and then cut about a 3-inch section out of this. That's all the cutting we need to do for this project. Next, you just need to find a drill bit that matches the diameter of your dowel. In this case, it's 1/4-inch, so I've already got a 1/4-inch dowel or 1/4-inch drill bit in my drill press. And you can go ahead and drill a hole all the way through if you want to, if it's easier. I have a drill press, so I'm going to go ahead and set the depth to be almost all the way through, just so I'm not going through, simply because it will put less holes in my my backer board here. Then you just set it roughly in the middle, flip on your drill press, and drill a hole. Okay, simple and done. Next, we need to sand this dowel down to a nice point. So I'm going to use my belt sander. If you've got some other way of doing it, you could do it with sandpaper and just do it by hand if you need to. But I've got a belt sander, so that's what I'm going to use. Get a nice fine point, that's all we need. And actually you could use a pencil sharpener if you had one. That might even make it a little bit easier, especially an electric pencil sharpener. But anyway, this is all you need, is a nice fine point. Next, all you need to do is just add a little bit of glue anywhere really. It just has to make some contact here. And it's not like this is going to be a structural thing by any means. All it is just holding weight above it. And so I like to kind of twist it around a little bit and make sure that the glue is nice and spread. And you're done. You just let that sit. And actually, I made some tonight for another project I'm doing, and I'm already using these because, again, all it is just holding something up. Here's another little trick for creating soft jaws for your vise. As you can see, I only have this little tiny baby vise. Someday, if I end up needing it, I might end up getting a bigger one. This one's worked just fine for me. But lately, or recently, I was cutting off the threads for these hooks for a project I'm making. And I didn't want to dent this brass, and so we're going to go ahead and make some soft grip jaw attachments, you might call them, to mount onto our vise here. So what we need to do first is take just a piece of scrap. This is just 1/8 inch plywood, probably birch or something. So we're going to take our width right there. And then we'll go ahead and take this over to the bandsaw. We're going to cut this, and then we're going to do one that's the exact same width. Now this is another project where your edges don't have to be exactly perfect. I mean, it might help if they're super perfect, but we can get close enough by just making a pretty straight cut on the bandsaw. So first I'm going to cut this width, and then I'm going to take this piece and trace it over here to the same width and copy that over. got two pieces that are the same width. Now what we need to do is chop these in half, because what we're going to do is basically create a shelf that these will sit on nicely on the vise jaws. So we're just going to gang these up like this and just chop them right down the middle. So it was a little bit of a trick to glue these up, but I just did a butt joint there, and that's all that we're going to need. So I glued them, or I clamped them to the 1, 2, 3 block, and then clamped the actual glue joint there that you can see. And so that's all it takes, and then we just wait for these to dry, and then we're going to have some really nice little vise jaw soft grips, I guess, whatever you want to call them. Now these are both dried and declampified, and so just throw them on there. They don't like stick on there, but I want to be able to put them on and take them off pretty easily. And now they sit there quite happily and they do their job. And it took me all of about less than 3 minutes to make. Nice little trick there. Sometimes you can use scraps to solve some just kind of annoying little problems around your shop. So for me, I've got this set of deep well sockets that I tried this little, I forget what you call these things, but you know what I mean, these things that basically hold the sockets on, but they're just not great, and the sockets pop off all the time. So what I'd like to do is create a rack where I can put all the sockets on, label them so I know exactly what they are. They all have a home and they're not going to fall off. Maybe I can hang it on the wall or something. So here's a little trick that we're going to use to give our sockets a home where they'll always belong. And all I'm going to use is this cut-off scrap of MDF from a project that I did. I used this to remake the base of a chair. But this is perfectly good material that I can use for something else. One of the beautiful things about making things out of scraps, just to kind of serve a purpose around your shop, is that you don't necessarily always have to make perfect measurements. And so really all I need to accomplish is to chop off this jagged edge here. So I'm just going to set my fence to roughly, you know, where I'm going to get rid of all that garbage. Now I would like to take this off, so I'm going to go ahead and do that on the radial arm saw, because that's better for this. If you don't have a crosscut type of saw, whether it's a miter saw or radial arm saw, you can always use a crosscut sled on your table saw. And again, I only need to remove the ugly piece, so that's where I'm going to set it. And there we go. Now I've got a perfectly square piece to work with. So now we need to work out how we're going to drill these holes, where we're going to drill them based on how many that we have. Okay, so I've got this set, and I'm just going to measure based on the biggest one that I have, and it turns out that it's almost exactly 1 inch in diameter. So that tells me that my spacing should be 1 inch or a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and mark these. See, that's exactly what I was talking about, how these just fall off. Not great. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is mark out every inch. So you can see that I got measurements every inch starting from this end. This one's going to be a little bit off, but that's okay because this is going to be the smaller one. So all I'm doing is using my speed square to transfer these marks all the way across. Now right now all I have is a metric set, because the quad that I have is a Honda, which only uses metric. But I also want to eventually get a set of standards, and at that point we can add some down here. So I'm going to go ahead and already make the pieces for both. Okay, so I've got all my lines drawn, and I also want to make sure that they're laid out evenly in this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and trace a line this way, and obviously, and you can see my speed square is not quite long enough to connect the lines perfectly. This is a piece of wood I already know is straight, so I'm just going to go ahead and use this and connect the line all the way across. And then we'll do the same thing down here a little ways. All I'm going to do is basically drill some holes at all of these intersections, that will give me guides to put my dowel. So I've got tons of this type of material, and I've got lots of dowel, this 1/4-inch dowel, as you saw in the last project. So we're going to go ahead and use this. So I'm going to drill 1/4-inch holes. But so the thing is that I need to drill these. I want to drill these on a little bit of an angle, so that when the dowel's coming out, that it's, you know, not perfectly straight on, but a little bit up. And so in order to drill holes that are consistent on the drill press, what I'm going to do is take this extra piece of scrap. I'm just going to nail this, brad nail it to here, and then that's going to give me a consistent angle for when I take it over to the drill press and just drill all these holes. Okay, so 2 inches seems to be about a good length for our for what we need to hold up, which is our deep well sockets. And again, we can use our 1, 2, 3 blocks. I already know this is 2 inches, so all I do is set this here, and then that's 2 inches away. And then I set this other one as a stop block, and as long as I don't push too hard on that, I know that all my cuts are going to be 2 inches wide. Okay, now we've got 24 of these sections that are all very close to 2 inches. Again, doesn't have to be exact. Some of these have the sticker. I'm going to peel the sticker off of these, and then we'll move to the next step. Next, we'll go ahead and remove this board that we used for our angle spacer. Let's see how we can best do this. So just knock it, and then hopefully I can just pry this right off. There we go. Now I'm just going to put a nice little puddle of glue here, so that I can soak my pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and just throw them in there. Now I've got this laid against a flat back with a silicone mat underneath it that wood glue does not stick to, and so I can go ahead and just throw a little glue on each one. I'm going to come back and clean this up a little bit with a damp towel and just go to town. I'm probably using a little bit too much glue there. You just need it to make some contact, and the wood glue will do its job. My math was slightly off. 14 times 2 is 28, not 24. So I just cut a couple more. Sorry, I'm an American woodworker, so I only know how to do math in fractions. Okay, now we'll go ahead and take a damp cloth and just clean up all this extra squeeze out. Alright, so we got the bulk of the squeeze out cleaned up. Again, I'm going to hit this with a can of spray paint. But I think that we're looking pretty good. All of our sockets are going to sit on there quite nicely. So we're going to use some of these painting spikes that we just made and go ahead and paint this up. Alright, just let that dry. Alright, that's dried. I mean, it doesn't look that great. I didn't pay that much attention. This is just going to go in a quarter in my shop. So you could paint it better if you took more time. So now I'm just going to take this silver Sharpie, which silver Sharpies are a really good thing to have in your shop because sometimes you have to write on dark things and black Sharpie doesn't show up so well. So I'm just going to go ahead and write out the corresponding sizes. I'm going to put the metric on the bottom, and when I get a set for the of standard US standard, I'm going to put them on the top. So I'll just go ahead and start here. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just pre-drill 4 holes, or probably maybe 2. 2 holes here in the middle to mount it to the wall. I'm going to countersink them because I'm using drywall screws that are countersink screws, these guys right here. So I'm going to need to countersink them, and then I'll put it on the wall, and then we can throw our bits on there. Put our sockets on there, and we're done. Oh yeah, one last step. Alright, there's just a couple little tricks that you could make out of scraps, helpful things around the shop so that stuff's not just going into the firewood pile. If you liked these, let me know, give me a thumbs up. And if you have any other ideas for ways that you can use scrap for simple little hacks around the shop, leave them in the comments below and maybe they'll make them into the next video. Thanks very much, have a great night.